Charlie Kirk recently had a debate with a vegan, and it went so badly he took it down. His own fans called him out for being rude, dismissive, and losing the debate. The person he debated, Michael Biletek, a fighter, a fitness coach, a masculinity coach. Not exactly your stereotypical soy boy. So let's take a closer look at the debate Charlie Kirk didn't want you to see.
So I've seen, based on most of your clips, that I agree with most of your beliefs and stances on things besides
Israel.
No, there's one.
I guessed.
There's one topic that I disagree with your logic on. And I've seen when you debate other people on this topic, oftentimes they get kind of shoot off the mic. So I ask that you please give me a fair chance to debate. I believe that the breeding, exploitation, and killing of animals for food when we do not have to is immoral. And obviously you...
Did you lose a bet?
No. So again, I'm serious. I would ask for a fair chance at a debate without shooting me off the mic or making jokes, please.
What do you eat?
What do I eat? Like for protein?
Sure.
I eat tofu, nutritional yeast, seitan. I easily get over 200 grams of protein per day.
It's a lot of tofu to get 200 grams of protein, man.
That's not my, I have like about a pound a day. That's not my main source. That gives me about 40 a day. But I get 200 grams a day for lifting. In terms of actual health for humans, we do not need that much. We barely even need 100 grams a day, which is easily obtained through plants.
Okay, so what is your contention? That we should outlaw or make it harder to eat animal-based protein?
No, I'm not as much concerned about the legality of it, more so the morality.
Okay, so are human beings equal to cows?
I would put human beings above cows.
Okay, so what moral, I mean, we don't want to see animal cruelty, but what moral worth would you say a cow has?
I would say that a cow has worth in the sense that we should not, like any sentient animal, cause them suffering or kill them if we do not have to.
Right. So you don't eat fish either, I assume? I
don't eat any animal products at all.
No animal products. And no dairy?
No.
So full vegan?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Do you know that there would actually be fewer cows if we didn't eat them?
I'm aware, yes.
So you would argue for less cows, not more cows, basically.
I am against the breeding, exploitation, and slaughter of them for food.
Charlie starts off by acting like fewer cows is a tragedy for vegans, as if vegans want more cows simply because we care about them. But that's a complete misunderstanding of why we care. If they're being bred into a system of confinement and slaughter and their whole life is predetermined suffering, why would we want that? Applying this logic in other cases leads to some pretty funny conclusions too. For example, Charlie is passionate about helping people, but I'm sure he wouldn't support breeding humans for organ harvesting just because it results in more humans. So why would we use that logic for cows?
What obligations do we have to wild animals?
I mean, the animals that we eat are not wild animals. They're domesticated. And we specifically breed, control, and kill them. We control their whole life, so they're not really wild.
Should we stop other animals from being carnivores?
No, because those animals need to eat, like a lion needs to eat an antelope to survive. So in a survival situation, I believe it is okay to eat animals, but in the modern day, we do not need to.
Charlie brings up wild animal behavior, basically asking, well, lions eat meat, so why shouldn't we? And it's a fair question, but we have to ask, are wild animals making moral choices? Comparing ourselves to wild predators definitely sounds cool, but it doesn't really make sense. We don't base our decisions on what bears or wolves do. We base them on reason, empathy, and accountability, and thank God we do. Can you imagine if we were all out here basing our life decisions on what a lion, a bear, or a wolf does? That would be a pretty messed up world. Charlie is standing on a stage talking about philosophy and values, so when he tries to compare himself to a predator, it doesn't work. It's like saying a baby cries, so it's okay for adults to throw tantrums. Although I'm sure many of you, like me, are partial to the odd tantrum. once in a while. We hold ourselves to different standards because we can make ethical choices. And with that ability to make ethical choices comes the responsibility to make them.
And I believe that we were designed by God not needing to eat meat.
What scripture are you referencing?
Genesis 1:29.
Right, and it's, you mean the scripture says God gave dominion over the animals
No, the
of
one
the
that
earth?
says, I've given you every seed-bearing plant, fruit, and tree on this earth, and for you, that shall be meat.
Right, but again, just to continue a little further, to be clear, in the Noahic covenant, it does allow for animals.
I'm aware. So
Right.
after the flood,
And just to be clear, doesn't the law give guidance on how to kill animals? Like how to kill animals in certain ways? The Bible is explicitly pro-meat eating, so much so that they would kill an animal as a sacrifice to God or kill the fatted calf in celebration of something.
I mean, when Jesus came, he ended the sacrifice, the animal sacrifice. So again, I think during that time, there was a lot more food shortage.
Well, hold on. Jesus ate fish. He fed the 5,000 with fish.
Yeah, so like I said,
And so I don't understand. But Jesus didn't say, stop, don't eat the fish. They are sentient beings. He fed fish to people.
Biblical interpretations vary massively, and some key words like fish, for example, have been mistranslated, misunderstood, and debated for centuries. I recommend watching the incredible film Cowspiracy to learn more about that. Some people hear dominion and think it means domination. Others, many Christian theologians included, see it as stewardship, a responsibility to care for animals the way a good ruler cares for his people. So while Charlie may be leaning into a more literal interpretation, it's worth acknowledging that there's a deeper debate to be had here.
so like I said, in a survival situation where there's 5,000 people,
There was also bread.
Yeah, but the bread has no protein.
This is just a small correction, but bread does contain protein. And what Michael probably meant was that bread has less protein than fish, not that it has none. Still, worth correcting.
So in a survival
But he was,
situation,
hold on, Jesus is God. He could have been, here's a legume. Jesus is God. He could have said, here's an almond. He said, Jesus is God. He could have, here's a lentil. Yet Jesus said, here's fish. So who are you to question Jesus, who he fed the 5,000 with? He could have said, here's tofu.
again,
The question isn't really what Jesus ate 2,000 years ago. The question is what we can choose to eat today. And when it comes to dominion, again, there's a huge distinction between using power and abusing it. Many Christians would argue that kindness, compassion, and avoiding harming animals is more aligned with Jesus' teachings than being violent to animals for our own enjoyment, like eating a steak or trophy hunting.
so the disciples brought him fish and bread. That was what he multiplied. Right?
Yeah,
That's
the
what they
feeding
had.
of the 5,000, right?
But I think in this modern day, we do not need to eat meat to be healthy, have good performance, and survive, and therefore causing immense suffering to these beings that do feel pain and suffering is
Got it.
wrong.
So I know this might seem unrelated, but I would hope to say you're also pro-life, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you are consistent. When vegans are not pro-life, that is a...
Yeah, I'm overall conservative. I agree with you on pretty much everything besides this one issue.
But you would agree, though, animals are not humans.
Yes.
Okay. But you would say, if I eat a steak, am I doing something immoral?
I would say that if you eat a steak knowing that, and you didn't have to, and you chose to pay for an animal.
Yes,
to
I
be-
plan to do this tonight. So tell me what...
Michael the vegan has already made it clear that this is a serious, deeply moral topic for him, and he politely asked Charlie to treat the conversation with respect, because this is about real animal suffering. Charlie now responds by joking that he's going to go and eat a steak that same night. Now, humor has its place, but this, in my opinion, wasn't the time to be scoring laughs. It should have been about seeing whether two people could actually connect on shared values, like caring about unnecessary suffering. Charlie may not have meant to be disrespectful, but it came across that way. It shows that he wasn't engaging with the arguments, and he was just playing to the crowd. And behaving like this on a large platform when discussing animal cruelty and the choices we make, I think that's a missed opportunity for growth and understanding that could really change the world for animals.
Tell me...
So, like I said, I think the breeding, exploitation, and killing of animals for food is immoral. Yes.
Immoral.
Yes.
But what moral... By what moral standard do you derive that from?
Well, are you against animal cruelty?
Of course I am. No one wants cruelty. In fact, the Bible is explicitly against animal cruelty. And so all of us should be. And the animals actually made an appearance in the Ten Commandments. Animals got a Sabbath. They got a day off. It says, for 6 days you shall work and 1 day you shall rest, including your ox and your animal. So the Bible actually has done more for animal rights than any other ancient scripture that we can ever find. So I'm all there. No one wants animal cruelty. However, I just want to understand by what moral framework do you say it is immoral to eat the meat of something that is not human, especially if we get nutrients and we human beings are able to flourish?
Well, I would say, why are you against animal cruelty?
Well, first of all, no one wants to see something suffer unnecessarily.
Charlie makes a key statement that he doesn't want anything to suffer unnecessarily. And that's a powerful point, because if we accept that, then we also have to ask, are the things we do to animals necessary? The Trump administration, for example, just started phasing out animal testing on dogs and other animals, which is amazing. They decided that this animal suffering is unnecessary, something many researchers have known for a long time. But factory farming, where most animal products like meat, dairy, and eggs come from, actually where 99% of US animal products come from, is filled with practices that most people would find appalling, some as violent and even more violent than what we saw in those animal experiments that have just been phased out. Extreme confinement, painful invasive procedures and mutilations, killing at a young age, when there are other delicious, nutritious alternatives just down the aisle at the supermarket, but we choose that violence instead? What does that say about us and our values? If Charlie is against unnecessary suffering, and he can live and eat well without supporting that animal suffering, which he can, well, why wouldn't he?
But if and when you are able to derive calories, nutrients, and I would also contest one of the other things, that I do believe we need animal-based protein. In fact, I think one of the main reasons, and maybe you're able to work it out, that young men are seeing such a dramatic drop in testosterone rates is the removal of animal-based proteins from diets, so young men especially, ages 10, 11, and 12, and replacement of a lot of these counterfeit soy-based, plant-based proteins.
So studies have found that with equal calorie and protein intake, there is zero difference between in testosterone levels between animal-based diet and
have you ever heard the term soy boy?
Yes, of course. I am a soy boy. Yes.
You are a soy boy.
In terms of that's what people call vegans. So yes, I am.
I didn't call you that. I was just said, have you ever heard of the term?
Yes,
Okay.
I've heard of the term. Yeah.
Okay.
The drop we're seeing in testosterone is a concern worth looking into, but Charlie's theory here isn't supported by the research. It's also not supported by the numbers. A tiny percentage of the population is currently vegan, and most young men in the US are still eating a lot of meat and other animal products. So if testosterone levels are dropping, it's likely not due to what Charlie's saying. It's likely more due to other factors like stress, sleep, and various changes in our lifestyles over the years, not tofu.
Okay.
So that's because.
Hold on, but again, I don't want to get too deep in the biology, but soy is inherently estrogenic, right?
So soy has phytoestrogens. They're not actual estrogens. They work in the body similar to a SERM, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator. What that actually does, in some situations, that can actually lower estrogen in males if they have an estrogen imbalance, and
suppress testosterone production.
It does not suppress the testosterone production. Studies have found equal testosterone between meat eaters and vegans, considering calories and protein equal. In addition, many professional athletes
No, the consumption of
vegan.
soy. The consumption of soy.
Yeah, I mean, most, in order to...
Let's get down to one last question, though, just from a very technical one.
Michael starts citing studies and Charlie changes the subject. That's something you see a lot when someone realizes they're losing ground. Soy has been studied extensively. It doesn't lower testosterone. It doesn't feminize men. Actually, soy protein and whey protein result in similar muscle gains when combined with resistance training. But even if you're still unsure about soy, it's not a problem. You don't have to eat soy to make better choices for animals. There are plenty of other animal-free food options to choose from. We should try not to confuse cultural anxiety around masculinity with nutritional science. Masculinity isn't about eating meat. It's about values like strength and integrity. And I believe choosing to protect the vulnerable and not dominate them is a masculine trait.
Wouldn't you agree that it is far more expensive to eat vegan than to eat animal-based protein? You have to go out.
Oh, it's about the same. Like a pound of, like when I before I went vegan, I'd have like 93% ground beef for like lean protein. That'd be like, at Aldi, it was like $6. So now I eat seitan, which most people don't know because it's, I just eat meat. But it has, in 400 calories, it has 80 grams of protein and it's only $5. So I mean, it's not that expensive to eat vegan.
So, but let me just ask you one last question on this, because how almost everything you consume has to be either manufactured or put together, where actually the way we're arguing to eat is far more of the earth and far more of whole foods. The vegans actually have to go out of their way to try and have different ingredients and compositions and oils that largely are far more human interference into the consumption of the food process, right? Which one is more of the earth, eating vegan or eating, let's just say, more paleo, not necessarily carnivore?
So I'll answer that, then I have one question to ask back to you. In terms of the food itself, I eat mostly pretty much just whole food vegan. Like sometimes I'll eat a vegan, like Impossible Burger. That's not necessarily healthy.
No, time out, hold on. That is like the most manufactured.
I know,
like,
that's not healthy. That's
no, not even healthy. Now you're proving my point. Like, let's just be clear. An Impossible Burger has like 50 ingredients that you cannot pronounce, and it is made in like a lab. Literally, it's like lab-grown meat, and versus a cow.
I understand. I'm not saying it's healthy, but
No,
at the
but
same time, a cheeseburger is not the staple of a healthy diet either, like with cows.
If I had to choose like a double cheeseburger from Culver's or an Impossible Burger, it's a double cheeseburger every single day that is better for you. Like, it's not even close. It's like not even close.
A lot of people do value this idea of more natural ways of living. And even though it doesn't always make sense, for example, cancer is natural, I do get it. There are benefits to eating less processed, whole food and living more in touch with nature, like spending time in the countryside and hiking and things like that. But the idea that meat is more natural than animal-free alternatives only seems to make sense until you look a bit closer. Animals in the food system live in tightly packed barns covered in their own feces and urine, and are given a cocktail of all sorts of supplements and drugs like antibiotics to keep them alive long enough to make money for these industries. That's far from what any of us would consider natural. Meat isn't just meat. It's a product of an industrial system, one that is, ironically, more engineered than many animal-free foods. We could argue all day about which is more or less processed, but it's not really that important. What's important is that animal-free foods can be healthy, they can be natural, made from things like beans and lentils, and they don't involve breeding and mutilating innocent animals.
And let me interrupt.
You can eat mostly whole
The
foods.
fact that we have to make Franken food, like Frankenstein food, is one of the greatest arguments that we should continue to eat real meat.
I eat only whole foods. Like
No, I got it. But you're the one that brought up Impossible Burgers. I didn't.
I know.
Right?
I was saying that you're gonna keep going and saying that that's not like an example. A lot of people use that as an example to shame veganism. Well, that's not an example of a healthy
I am curious. How did you get into this?
Charlie talks about Frankenstein food, but the irony is the animals we eat today have themselves been bred into unnatural forms. They're basically Frankenstein animals. They've been bred into bloated, mutated versions of what they once were. Chickens that grow so fast their legs can't support them. Dairy cows so overworked that they collapse. These aren't wild animals. They're genetically shaped for output. So if synthetic ingredients are a concern of yours, it's worth looking at the full food system, including meat, dairy, and eggs. If your concern is eating naturally, there's nothing natural going on in animal farming.
I first got into it by I saw how animals were treated in factory farms, which is what 99% of meat sold in America is factory farms. So a lot of people say, "Oh, grass-fed, pasture-raised."
I mean, look,
that is only a small percentage.
I do want to thank you because we'll get to the next question. By the way, you guys, the line's over there. I see. What's going on? It is hard to take an unpopular position. And you've taken a very unpopular public position of which you should be commended.
I don't want to put words in Charlie's mouth or try and read his mind here, but it's hard not to think he shut this debate down because he was outmatched and then took the video down once he saw his supporters turning against him in the comments. I think Charlie stepped into a topic he wasn't fully prepared for, and that's fine. It happens. It's okay to not have all the answers. But what's not okay is mocking, deflecting, and posturing when you're not actually prepared. Michael stayed calm, rational, and focused. Charlie cracked jokes and kept changing the subject and avoided direct challenges. And maybe that's why the video disappeared. Hopefully this can be a moment of reflection for Charlie and for anyone watching. You don't have to agree with everything, but if you're a reasonable person, then when someone asks you to think about your choices, about real animal suffering, maybe don't laugh it off, because caring about animals isn't weakness, it's responsibility. And choosing to live with a little more intention, making choices that make the world a better place for animals, I think that's something worth respecting.